you going? This is the Sleepy Koala, and I'll be showing you how to use Tilemaps in Unity with a top-down perspective. Be sure to pause the video while following to not miss out on key information. The link to the assets used within this tutorial is in the description below. Right, first things first, we're going to go ahead and open up Unity Hub and make sure that the latest Unity version is 2020.3.29. This will be used for the projects in my case. Now we're gonna go and click new project and making sure that the 2D core template is selected. This is actually a great help as Unity's made our lives easier by collating various 2D packages together, as you can see here. Right, once you've named the project, I'll just do top-down guide. You're going to click create project. In my case, I already have one already open. And yeah, just a quick side note, for anyone that's already has this all set up and you just want to implement the Tilemap package, you can head over to Window, heading down to Package Manager, and you want, in most cases, it'll be in project open by default, but in this case, you want to open Unity Register. And once it's loaded, it's taking a while, thanks to Unity, you're going to select 2D Tilemap Editor and click Install. In my case, it says remove, but that's because, as you can see, it's already installed. Right, with that said, now it's time to import the sprites and sprite sheets for this tutorial. Notice that I've already imported mine into a folder called Sprites. This is a personal preference of mine, but you could call the folder Art or Artwork if you wish. I'm going to go a step further and actually create a new folder and name it after the artist. So it's Study Art. And I'm going to move over my assets into it. I like to do this as it helps me keep track of which assets belong to who for attribution's sake. With that done, we must now set up our sprites and sprite sheets separately, starting with sprites. Right, navigating to our sprite files, we're going to hold Shift and select the topmost sprite, and then select the bottommost sprite. And then we're going to hold Control and left click the text file and the sprite sheets. With that done, we're going to head over to the inspector and do the following. We're going to make sure that texture type is set to sprite. We're going to make sure that sprite mode is set to single. This is normally done by default, which is okay. And then we're going to set the pixels per unit to the size of the sprite, which is in my case, 16. And then we're going to head over to filter mode and set that to point. Normally you would want to set the max size to the size of the sprite. There is no 16, so we're going to set them to 32. Don't worry about if you see these type of issues, only textures with such and such. Generally this is an issue for you, but these sprites were not designed for Unity, so it's okay. Moving on to our sprite sheets, the steps are a bit different as we need to set sprite mode to multiple. So after selecting both sprite sheets, we're going to head over and make sure that texture type is set to sprite and sprite mode is set to multiple. Then we're going to go ahead and set the pixels per unit to the size of the intended sprite. So in my case, it would be 16. And then we're going to head over to filter mode, set that to point, and click apply. Now I'm going to go ahead and select one of our sprite sheets. In my case, I'm going to select decorative. and then click the Sprite Editor button in the inspector. It will proceed to open up this window, and you're going to go ahead and click Slice. You're going to want to set the type to grid by cell size. You can leave it at automatic if you want to live dangerously, but select grid by cell size and set the pixel size to the size of your sprite. So in my case, 16. And you're simply just going to select and click Slice. And then could select tiles individually and rename them to whatever you want. But I'm just going to go ahead and click Apply. And then close out of the Sprite Editor. And do the same for the second sprite sheet. Good work with that done. Let's start with our palette. Left clicking Window, we're going to hover over 2D and select Tile Palette. Notice we have many tools, as they are known, each with its special purpose. But ignoring them for now, we're going to click Create New Palette and name the palette to whatever you wish. Catacombs is what I will call mine. Left clicking Curate, we're going to create a new folder called Palettes, as you never know when you might use more of them. I'm going to go a step further by double clicking the palette and creating a new folder named Catacombs, or whatever you've called your palette. Yep, with that folder selected, I'm going to go ahead and click Select Folder button. If we go ahead and review the project assets, we can find that there should be now a new prefab with your palette's name. This is your palette right here. It's got a grid, it's got everything, it's great. You can make multiple palettes to suit your needs, but for this video, that will be the only one I'll be making. Let's just quickly move over to our palettes over here. Right. Now adding sprites to the palette is actually pretty straightforward and easy. All you have to do is drag and drop the sprite sheet onto the center part of the palette window. So just here. Double clicking palettes, we're going to once again select our Catacombs folder and click Select Folder. You may need to wait for some time, as Unity has begun creating tiles and arranging them in the palette according to the layout within the sprite sheet. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward that. And yeah, we have our palette here. We can move around using right click. You just hold it down, so it kind of like grabs it, and you can also zoom in with the mouse wheel. Yeah, and of course here we have your tiles within the palette folder. Just close that up because it looks a bit messy. Now that our palette is set up, let's start by right-clicking in the hierarchy, hovering over the 2D object, Tilemap, and left-clicking rectangular. This will be the Tilemap style we're using. And we're going to go ahead and rename that to floor. And then duplicate that floor tilemap and rename it. Inspector, you can right click it and press rename, it's up to you. rename it to obstacle. Now selecting the obstacle tile map, we're gonna head over to the inspector window and change order in layer within the tilemap renderer to 1. Now the reason for this change is we want the tile map, the obstacle tile map that is, to always be above the floor tile map no matter what. So you could move them around and obstacle will always be ahead. Of course, depending on what happens, sorting layer can also be taken into account, but we won't be going into that in this video. So navigating back to our tile palette window, left click the brush tool. Mine is already selected. You could also press the B key to quick select the brush tool. And we can proceed to click a floor tile. Now, holding down right click. Yep, I'll select this one. And before we do paint the scene, we need to first make sure that the active tile map within the tile palette window is set to floor. Great. Now let's proceed to start painting. So do that, I guess. Notice that when you're painting the floor tile, tile by tile, it's a tad bit time consuming. So let's instead go back to the tile palette window and click the box fill tool. You could also press the U key. So, yep. And now holding left click, we can drag it. And yep, that's much faster. Thanks, Unity. But of course, it's a bit strange that we only have flooring in the scene. So let's add some walls. Once again, making sure that the active tile map is set to obstacle. Let's press B to get our brush tool and head on over to one of the wall tiles. Yep, this is fine. And we can go ahead and put that down. Feel free to change the tiles as you wish. I'm going to go ahead and actually fast forward this a bit. If you do make a mistake, you could press the D key to get the eraser tool, or of course you can select it within the tile palette. Right. Some sincere words of advice. Make sure that you always check you are indeed working on the correct tile map, lest you suffer from the same frustration I've always felt while working on projects, and I've made silly mistakes, numerous of them. You can check you are working on the correct tile map, of course, by, as we said earlier, active tile map. So make sure it's always set to the one that you are working on or intend to work on. Also keep in mind that while you have a tile map selected, it activates the focus on feature. So you can set it to either grid or tile map. In our case, we would always do tile map, and it lets you see what you're working on. So as you can see, the floor tiles are only placed within this section. But if we set the active tile map to obstacle, it now shows us every obstacle tile. It's very handy, and it helps us to avoid confusion and clutter. If you want to see more tutorials like this, perhaps a second video, be sure to like the video, comment if you have any questions, and of course, subscribe to the channel. It really does help. To be honest, I reckon I deserve a nap after all that, so take it easy.